My name is NonStopAntonio, and today we will be reviewing and breaking down Superman and Lois Episode 1 of Season 3. The Man of Steel is back in the CW's best-looking show. So, we got to talk about all the cool things that happened in it, because they set up the plot for the season, they gave us some of the main villains, and there were some pretty cool Easter eggs for DC villains in it. So let's jump into my episode breakdown for Superman and Lois Episode 1. Welcome to NonStopAntonio, where I talk about everything nerdy. I love Marvel, DC, and anime, and if you do too, I hope you enjoy this video. Superman and Lois Season 3 takes place soon after the events of Season 2, roughly a month afterwards, and the show continues to prove that it is one of the best CW shows. And I love how this show came on and then Gotham Knights did, probably just to keep all the audience around that came for Superman and Lois and hoping that they'd stay for Gotham Knights. Superman and Lois once again has some amazing acting and some great cinematography. Tyler and Elizabeth play Clark and Lois amazingly, and the performances are top notch. I liked how they introduced that pregnancy storyline this episode, but it seemed like it was going to go somewhere, like they were going to have conflict where Clark didn't want to have a kid, but Lois did. However, they kind of changed it by the end because Clark saw a video of his boys growing up and he's like, you know what? I do want kids. And then it got taken away from them because she's not pregnant. Well, at least she's not pregnant in the eyes of the show so far. She might actually be, and there might be a whole change up to get her to the doctor's office because I think something's going on there. But we'll get to that. The season has already set up the main villain for this season. They set up Bruno Mannheim, which was referenced at the end of last season with Diggle telling John Henry Irons that is the man that killed the John Henry Irons of their Earth. And Bruno Mannheim is the leader of Intergang. So we're going to be dealing with Intergang, which is a gang that deals with a lot of space-based stuff. And it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with it and if we might possibly get a tease for Apocalypse, because Apocalypse New Gods do tie into Intergang, because that is where they get their equipment from. We also have the villain ONOMATOPOEIA. And I'm going to butcher this every time I say it because I talk too fast, but he's a Green Arrow villain, so it's going to be interesting to see how Superman and Lois uses him. They also name-dropped Lex Luthor, who we are getting this season, and it's going to be played by Michael Cutlitz. And the only thing I was kind of off with was Michael Bishop now playing Jonathan Kent. Like, nothing wrong with the actor. He does look a lot more like the actor that plays Jordan Kent, and they look more like siblings. However, it just didn't feel right. The first episode really didn't do much for him, but I'm sure as the season goes on, I will get more familiar with him and we'll probably grow to like him a lot more. Overall, great first episode, and I can't wait to see how this show progresses and how we deal with Intergang and Lex Luthor and possibly other villains. But let's break down the episode now, talking about everyone's relationships, because they set up pretty much all the relationships for all the main characters and where they're going to be going this season. Because we got Jordan and Clark, we have them training. I love seeing them fly because it looks really cool. And on top of it, they go to the Fortress of Solitude and Jordan does some sparring with some holographic characters, and these characters are villains ripped straight out of the comics. However, I'll get to that a little bit more in the video when we talk about those characters in more depth. And I like how we see Jordan go and try to be a hero by himself. He messes it all up, and Clark gets mad at him because the kid almost reveals his secret identity, which I think the one thing this season is they're gonna have to learn to work together. You're gonna have to have Superman and Superboy team up and learn how to work together as a team, and also give Jordan a suit. He needs a suit so he doesn't have the possibility of ruining his secret identity. Then we have Sam Lane and Natalie Irons. And the thing is with this too, is in Natalie's original universe, Sam was her grandfather. Which, in this, it's different because he's not. And I like how he seemingly reaches out at first to go see a movie with her to bond a little bit, to be kind of like that grandfather. However, he uses it to try to recruit her for the DOD, and then John gets mad at him later because he's like, why the hell are you recruiting my daughter for the DOD? She was just looking for a grandfather. Like, I know you're not her grandfather, but like, you don't have to just recruit her. I just love where it's going because it's trying to show that Sam is really bad with people and even admits that he's bad with people. And that he does want a relationship with Natalie, and he wants to try to bond, and he apologizes for trying to recruit her. But I think he's still going to try to bring her in because she is a genius, and she could do a lot of good. Plus, you know, she has a suit of armor. She could be a pretty cool hero. And then Lana and Kyle get officially divorced. She signs the papers. And at the same time, both characters seem like they're going to be going through some stuff. Because Kyle ends up sleeping with Chrissy, who Chrissy freaks out because she thinks it's a whole mess and it's going to end badly. So it looks like, you know, there might be a thing going on with them. And then Lana looked like she was kind of flirting with John Henry Irons at Jordan and Jonathan's birthday. It might have not been a thing, but they might have just been hinting at it. But also, she has some stuff of her own to deal with because George, the ex-mayor, comes and gets mad at her because she moved funds around because the school was filled with black mold and they need to fix it. And he turns around and is like, no, you just leave it there. The kids can breathe that in. They'll be fine. Total corrupt dude. Because he also turns around. You don't know what you're getting into. which is just putting Lana in some danger because something sinister is going on there. He might have made a deal that money goes to someone corrupt, and if they don't get their money, they're gonna kill someone. And then we have Jordan and Sarah, who broke up last season. Sarah doesn't want to be in a relationship with Jordan right now. She just wants to be friends, and I feel bad for the kid because he's in love with her, but he now has to find a way to make this work where he has this friend that he can trust stuff to, but she doesn't feel the same way as him. I think that's gonna be a little complicated going through the series, and there is a chance she could end up liking him back eventually, but right now I think he has a lot to learn to kind of move past his feelings and just be friends. Now let's talk about the villains. Like I said earlier, the main villain of the season has been set up, and that's Bruno Mannheim. Again, the leader of Intergang, and that's who he is in the comics as well. And on this Earth, he killed the John Henry Irons that lived there. And both Lois's story and Superman's story are tying into this because Lois is looking into him, trying to figure out why he killed John Henry Irons, and she even goes to the sister of that Earth, Dr. Irons, and she's like, you shouldn't be looking into this. My brother, he wasn't doing anything good. He was selling tech to the Intergang. So it seems like the John Henry Irons of this Earth isn't that good of a dude. And Superman's also dealing with it because when Superman goes to fight a villain in Metropolis, it ends up being Henry Miller, the Atom Man that he fought in season 1 and put him in jail. However, he got out of jail because he had brain cancer, and it looks like Bruno Mannheim gave him powers. And I'm assuming he gave him powers because he was giving the guy a chance to live, or at least try to move past the brain cancer, but that ended up making Henry do whatever Bruno wanted him to do, and he even says, he's like, they're gonna kill me, something bad's gonna happen. So I'm assuming here that if he doesn't listen to them, Bruno will get him killed. The fight itself was pretty cool, watching Superman realize that Henry had powers and fly through the city, which did some pretty bad destruction, but you can see Superman going in to like abandoned buildings so no one would get hurt. But that ends up leading to Henry looking like he gets shot, but there's no bullets. And I think there's like 2 reasons for this, where it wasn't actually bullets that were coming out of him. It was something that was inside of him that was either popping out of him, or the power that he was given was too much for his body and it started breaking. And then you have Onomatopoeia showing up. I was actually really surprised to see because he's a Green Arrow villain and not a Superman one. And usually in the comics, he is a serial killer that targets vigilantes who are not powered, which is why he's a Green Arrow villain. He earned his name because he imitates noises around him, such as dripping taps and gunshots and etc., which could be what the sound was when Henry Miller was getting shot. And on top of it, Superman hears all this destruction going around him, and it's just like that's probably what Onomatopoeia was doing, making him hear that stuff so that he could get away with Henry Miller's body. I am really curious to see, though, if we will get a Green Arrow reference, because he is a Green Arrow villain. And after that whole ordeal, we get the reveal that they're in the suicide slums of Metropolis. And the suicide slums is a neighborhood in Metropolis that has a high rate of crime because of its market area. People who cannot afford the penthouses and the apartments of Metropolis move here because the property prices are so low due to corruption. And it's interesting because the suicide slums in the comics have some interesting characters who go there, because Black Lightning used to operate out of it mainly, and we also have characters like the Guardian. And because this isn't the same Earth as Supergirl now, the Guardian isn't Jimmy Olsen, it's gonna be a different character. So I'm curious if we'll see them and if we'll see another version of Black Lightning. And on top of it, John Henry Irons in the comics also later established a base there. So I wonder if there's a possibility of John Henry Irons leaving Smallville and moving over to Metropolis and operating in the suicide slums to protect that area. Because then you could have Natalie going to the school in Metropolis for the DOD. And it's some interesting stuff, because then you have Onomatopoeia bringing Henry Williams to Bruno Mannheim, and then they inject him with something that brings him back to life because he was dead. So I'm curious to see what the serum is about, because he gave him powers and then it brought him back from the dead. So it's probably this new thing he's trying to sell powers to the public. Because he was able to go toe-to-toe with Superman, a lot of criminals are probably going to want that serum. I also definitely think at the end of the episode, when Lois gets the call from Dr. Irons, and she says she wants her to come in for more testing, is a ploy by Bruno to get Lois there, because Lois is looking into him. He was probably always watching Dr. Irons to make sure she never talked about her brother and how he died. And this episode has some pretty interesting stuff. It looks like a lot of the stuff is going to be happening in Metropolis, which I actually do like to see. It's cool to see Smallville, but only so much stuff can happen in Smallville, and it's nice to be branching out to Metropolis, where Superman mainly operates out of. Like I said earlier in the video, let's talk about those villains that were shown in the Fortress of Solitude, because those are some deep cuts from the comics, and it's cool that we got to see them in this universe. So that hologram that Superman was going through to get Jordan a sparring partner, we got to see 3 bad guys from the comics. We got Atomic Skull, who is a legacy name character where multiple people have had that Atomic Skull name. He has radioactive superpowers, including enhanced superhuman abilities and energy blast projection. The look we see here is more like the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, which I think is pretty cool. And then we got Titano, who is a super gorilla who fought Superman on multiple occasions in the Silver Age of comics. He was a space travel test subject who was exposed to cosmic radiation that made him grow incredible size and also shoot kryptonite lasers. That was pre-crisis. Post-crisis, he was also a US government test subject exposed to cruel experiments. And then we had Mechano Man, which I wasn't actually able to find a lot about this character. I tried looking him up and literally nothing came up except All-Star Superman, because Superman stops a rampaging Mechano Man with Lois Lane in his clutches. And that's pretty much all I could find on the character. Overall, some cool little Easter eggs, some cool details from this episode. I can't wait to see what else comes of it and who else we get to meet, especially because they're doing stuff in Metropolis. What did you think of this episode? Did you see any Easter eggs that I might have missed? What do you think is going to happen later in this season? If you like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It helps out the channel a lot. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.